A 63-year-old man walked into a cafe last month, and within seconds 3 women in their 40s turned to look at him, not because he was famous, not because he was tall, but because of something specific about the way he moved, his presence and his entire being in that room. And I'm going to show you the exact parts of his body that triggered this almost involuntary attention. These are the physical characteristics that women perceive in a fraction of a second, whether they realize it or not. Here's something that could challenge everything you've learned about age and attraction. Renowned relationship therapist Esther Perel has been researching desire for decades, and her findings point to something fascinating. She observed that the psychology of female attraction matures in established relationships and generally becomes more nuanced, specific, and in many ways more intense than the superficial attraction of youth. And as for men over 60, women don't look where you'd expect them to. Most men assume that maturity means becoming invisible to women. They think the game is over. They believe physical attractiveness only applies to younger men with toned bodies and a full head of hair. This assumption is not only wrong. In fact, it cost them context they could easily make. A study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relations found that women's attractiveness patterns change significantly with age. While younger women generally prioritize conventional attractiveness traits, women over 35 increasingly respond to so-called character indicators, physical characteristics, that reveal something deeper about a man's character. And this is where it gets interesting. These character traits are usually found in parts of the body that men completely forget about, parts they consider unimportant, parts whose improvement or attention they have never considered. Esther Perel spoke at length about how desire operates on multiple levels simultaneously. The mind may say one thing, but body signals, especially the eyes, and facial expressions, the body reacts to completely different signals. Women constantly process physical information about men, making unconscious calculations about their health, performance, emotional availability, and yes, even their potential as partners. The 5 body parts I'm referring to are precisely the areas where these calculations occur most rapidly. And the 4th body part on the list is something men completely ignore, even though it's scrutinized particularly closely by women. The transformation possible here is almost unfair once you understand it. Let's clarify this. First, the hands. This is the body part that women notice first, and constantly. Hands are under almost constant observation, even if a woman isn't aware of it. She is. Esther Perel spoke of hands as a primary expression of intimacy. She notes that a woman's hands reveal everything she needs to know about how a man moves in the world, how he handles objects, and, metaphorically speaking, how he might treat them. But here lies the crucial point. What women actually perceive in this. First, the dress. Not as perfectly manicured as a model's hands, but well-groomed. Clean tongues, neatly trimmed, no dirt underneath. It sounds trivial, but the number of similar men who neglect their hands is alarming. There's a connection to the body. Secondly, posture and legs. A survey by a major fashion brand revealed that 68% of women are immediately put off by uncontrolled hand gestures on a first date. Secondly, the nature of the hand movements is crucial. Do they appear calm and deliberate, or nervous and insecure? Do they gesture confidently while speaking, or do they hide behind door frames? Hand movements reflect one's inner state, and women interpret this intuitively. Thirdly, and this is fascinating, women notice traces of dexterity in the hands, a certain frailty from actual use, evidence that these hands have built, repaired, and made things. There's a reason why the expression "skilled with one's hands" evokes romantic associations. It signals competence that goes far beyond physical labor. A woman I spoke to told me how she struck up a conversation with a 64-year-old man at a dinner party. She said the first thing she noticed was his hands. They were clean, very clean, calm when he was resting, and expressive when he spoke about his work with trees. These hands told her that he was someone who created things, cared for them, and paid attention to detail. And now for a practical tip. Hand care for men over 60 is surprisingly simple, yet almost always neglected. A simple moisturizing cream prevents excessive darkening. Regular hair care is important, and above all, you should pay attention to your hand movements. Hand gestures and a steady, thoughtful facial expression are perceived as self-confidence. Quick, nervous movements, on the other hand, signal insecurity, regardless of what is being said. Dr. David Given, an anthropologist who studies nonverbal communication, discovered that hand gestures are among the strongest signals of attraction in human interaction. Women are evolutionarily programmed to pay attention to hands, as they reveal a lot about abilities, health, and temperament. And speaking of body parts that signal temperament, the next body part will surprise you with its effect. Number 2, the arms. It always shocks men when they hear it. Weapons. Seriously? Yes, seriously. And there are sound scientific explanations for this. In various studies, women were asked to emphasize body parts that men find attractive. Surprisingly, they positioned their arms high, often above their chest, above their legs, sometimes even competing with their face. This aspect becomes even more important for men over 60. That's why arms play such a significant role. They are among the few visible body parts in normal social situations. Arms may be covered by belts, the chest concealed by t-shirts, but arms become visible when a man rolls up his belt, reaches for something, or simply spends time outdoors in warm weather. Estelle discusses the concept of the body and the buttocks. Number 4, micro-exposure of carriers and facial hair in attraction. The small revelations in everyday life that arouse interest. A rolled-up corset that exposes one arm is a perfect example of subtle skin display. It feels intimate without being intentional. It's revealing without being over the top. The biological reason is simple. Arms indicate physical capability. Muscles are functional muscles used for holding, lifting, and controlling. They show that a man can do things, handle things, and cope with physical reality. A friend of mine, a woman in her 50s, told me about a handyman who installed her kitchen cabinets. He describes himself as average in most respects. Normal height, average face shape, a man in his 60s with red hair. But when he rolled up his suspenders to go to work, something changed, she said. His arms looked muscular and powerful, and suddenly the whole interaction felt different. She laughed as she told me this. I hadn't even realized how much I'd paid attention to arms until I kept staring at his. For men over 60, arms can actually be an area where age is an advantage. Years of training create a definition that can't be achieved through gym exercises alone. The key is maintaining sufficient muscle mass through regular exercise while keeping your skin healthy. It's the simple things that count. Fluid balance affects the appearance of the arms. Basic pressing exercises maintain good posture. Number 5, definition of movement and energy. And perhaps most importantly, the willingness to show it. Men who constantly wear long belts are concealing one of their potential strengths. But now we need to talk about something much more subtle and far more effective. Number 3, the eyes and their surroundings. Here we move from something purely physical to something more complex. The eyes are obviously important. This is common knowledge. But what women over 35 really hide goes far beyond eye color and shape. Esther Peele has written extensively about what she calls the radiant gaze. She describes it as the way a person's eyes communicate whether they are truly present at a given moment or mentally elsewhere. And she notes that this characteristic becomes more apparent with increasing maturity of both the observer and the viewer. For men over 60, the eyes tell a story. The lines around the eyes, often called laugh lines, aren't necessarily a bad thing. A study from the University of Western Canada found that people with laugh lines are perceived as more authentic, warmer, and more trustworthy than those without. The traces of a life full of laughter, sunshine, and emotions are attractive, especially when combined with eye contact. Women specifically seek out 3 elements. What do women really interpret from these signals? First, the type of attention. Does a woman feel focused or distracted when a man looks at her? Is his gaze directed at her, or is he looking behind her? This kind of attention is visible and immediate. It can't be faked for long. Second, expressiveness. Does his gaze change when he talks about important things? Do his eyes light up, appear strained, more intense, or do they remain expressionless? Women are more likely to recognize emotional availability through eye contact than through almost any other means. Third, signs of health. Radiant white skin, sufficient hydration, alertness. These are signals of general health and vitality that women unconsciously perceive as indicators of a partner's suitability, even if they aren't consciously evaluating someone as a potential partner. I spoke with a woman who told me she met her current partner when she was 58. He was 62 years old at the time. She said the first thing she noticed was his eyes, not their color. When I asked her about the color, she couldn't remember. But the way they looked at her when she spoke made her feel seen and interested. This feeling arose solely from the way his eyes behaved during the conversation. The practical aspect here concerns health and habit. Eye health is important. Simply get enough sleep, drink plenty of fluids, and if necessary, seek simple, medically supervised treatment for any problems. But habits are more important. Practice being in the here and now. Be fully present in conversation with someone. Put your phone away. Turn off your inner dialogue. Concentration. This. Charisma can be trained and is first revealed in the eyes. But now I would like to address the body part that men completely neglect. Number 4, the legs and overall posture. This is the tool I mentioned earlier. Men over 60 largely neglect their personal grooming, yet it remains under constant observation by women. Posture, leg position, charisma, everything counts. Here's something that might be uncomfortable to hear. Body language is one of the quickest ways women categorize men. Confident or insecure, dynamic or resigned, it's worth paying attention to, or better yet, avoiding. These assessments occur in less than 2 seconds and are based almost entirely on a man's posture and movements. Estapel discusses posture as an element of what she calls erotic presence. She notes that desire responds to energy, and energy is physically expressed through how the body occupies space. A man can be psychologically attractive, but his demeanor can neutralize that attractiveness. Conversely, a man with average qualities can appear unattractive simply through his appearance. Studies clearly demonstrate this. A study published in the Bulletin of Personality and Social Psychology found that an open and inviting posture significantly increases perceived attractiveness more than clothing, marriage, or even facial symmetry. Study participants consistently rated individuals with an open and inviting posture as more attractive, confident, and desirable as partners. In men over 60, posture often suffers due to decades of office work, poor habits, and the prevailing societal notion that it no longer matters. But reality is different. This is more important than ever. Because at 60, posture becomes a conscious expression of joie de vivre and signals either a sudden change in behavior or continued vitality. The arms in particular are a focus of attention. Folded arms are a sign of defeat, of protection, of retreat, of distance. Outstretched arms are a sign of openness, of self-confidence, of worldliness. A woman in her 60s told me about a class reunion. She noticed 2 men who had graduated in the same year, both the same age and of similar build. One walked with folded arms, bent steps, and slightly bowed heads. The other walked with his arms folded behind him, hip-width apart, and with deliberate steps. She said the difference was so small it was almost comical. One looked 20 years older than the other, even though they were the same age. The practical implications here are both immediate and long-lasting. Immediate changes are possible now. Pay attention to your arm posture and consciously adjust it throughout the day. Further improvements can be achieved through targeted strength training of the muscles that support an upright posture, especially in the arms and upper body. The benefits of this investment are enormous. No other change can so dramatically influence how women perceive a man over 60, and unlike many unchangeable physical characteristics, posture is entirely within a man's control. But there is one last body part that encapsulates everything and is perhaps the most surprising of all. Number 5, the mouth and its movements. This isn't just about smiling, although that is enormously important. It's about the entire interplay of the tongue, teeth, and especially the mouth movements during speech and expression. Esther Pell spoke about the mouth playing a central role in communication and attraction. She notes that women often unconsciously assess a man's mouth during a conversation, perceiving not only the words but also their formation. The mouth becomes an indicator of intimacy in a way that most men are never aware of. I'll explain what women actually notice. First of all, dental health and care. This isn't about perfect teeth. On the contrary, perfect teeth can be perceived as artificial. It's about basic dental care. Clean teeth, fresh breath, no signs of neglect. A survey by the American Dental Association found that 73% of women notice teeth first. And among older adults, yes, the percentage has even increased. Secondly, the quality of the smile. Is it genuine or forced? Is it noticeable? Does it look natural or strained? An authentic smile is one of the most attractive facial expressions a person can have. And women are surprisingly good at distinguishing between a genuine and a forced smile. Thirdly, and this is where it gets interesting, for men over 60, it's the mouth. Movements when speaking that matter. Does he speak clearly and distinctly? Is he confident in his choice of words? Or does he shout, sound rushed, or uncertain in his expression? A speech therapist I consulted explained that women generally process male speech partly through visual channels, observing mouth movements in addition to the voice. That's why video calls often feel more personal than phone calls. We see the mouth movements and hear the sound simultaneously. In older men, the mouth can reveal age in a way that is quite attractive. Lines around the mouth, years of expression, symmetrical features that reveal character. These characteristics can be perceived as expressions of dignity, rather than signs of weakness. One woman described her attraction to her partner's mouth. She said she first noticed the way he spoke, with distinct pauses that showed he was truly thinking about his words. Then she noticed his smile, which seemed slow and sincere, never forced or fake. She said she trusted that mouth before she consciously decided to trust the man she was in contact with. The practical aspects here are simple. Dental hygiene becomes more important, not less. A well-groomed appearance in men is characterized by regular teeth cleaning, conscious breathing, and good oral hygiene. But in addition to hygiene, behavior also plays a role. A genuine smile, clear speech, and the expression of emotions through the mouth. Here are 5 body parts that women immediately notice when first meeting a man. Over 60 hands, expressing themselves through their dexterity and care in eating and in their movements. Arms, whose visible definition reveals physical competence. The eyes convey presence and emotional availability. Legs and posture signal stability and self-confidence. And the mouth suggests both health and the possibility of intimacy. None of this requires a gym membership, expensive treatments, or radical procedures. It requires attention. It requires the realization that attractiveness doesn't end with age. She simply shifts her focus. Essel's work repeatedly emphasizes that desire is about vitality, about presence, about the energy one brings to an interaction. The body parts I mentioned are not merely physical characteristics. In these places, this energy becomes visible. The men who understand this and protect these places, while their companions reject them, gain an almost unfair advantage. They become night owls, in environments where other men of a similar age become invisible. And here's the final piece of the puzzle that ties it all together. All 5 of these body parts have something in common. It's about how a person interacts with their environment. Hands that do things, arms that work, eyes that see, arms that are turned towards each other, a mouth that communicates. These are not passive characteristics that simply exist. They are an expression of a man's life. Women read them because they tell a story that words alone cannot convey. And for men over 60, this story can be one of enduring joie de vivre, or of a gradual withdrawal from it. The choice is evident in these 5 areas, whether men are aware of it or not. Everything I've discussed today relates to what women see when they look at a man. But interaction isn't just visual. It's also deeply physical, in terms of contact, touch, and the way bodies interact. And that's exactly why you should watch what appears on the screen now. The video is called How to Open It Up to Awaken Desire, Female Psychology, and based on everything we've discussed about body parts, it shows you how to actually use them. A man can have perfect posture, skillful hands, and attentive eyes, but if he doesn't know how to translate this into physical closeness, he completely misses out on the most powerful trigger. This video explores the specific mechanisms of hugging that activate neurological responses in women. It explains why men hug incorrectly and how the right kind of physical contact can almost instantly arouse desire. Click on the video now, because understanding what women see is only half the story. What she feels when you truly